I'm here today at the Andy Warhol Museum, joined by Sarah Honey Young, and we're here to talk about Jean-Michel Basquiat, his relationship to Andy Warhol, and some images of Basquiat that are in our permanent collection. Honey, thank you so much for joining us. You're an incredible local artist and cultural, I don't know, just maker, and I'm really excited to get your perspective on Basquiat. Yeah. So to talk about that voyeuristic gaze that Warhol brought to many of the subjects that he worked with, and including Basquiat, who wasn't just a subject, he was a friend, he was a collaborator. These images, I will say, they're hard for me to look at.
Agreed.
And these are actually pretty chaste compared to some of the other ones that are also in the archive of like a fully nude Basquiat, Basquiat also loved being naked.
Yeah.
He was proud of his body, he loved being naked, and we're also many photos of Basquiat's naked body, let's talk about these images and why you've chosen them and what you would like us to notice about these images.
Indeed. So these photos make me a little uncomfortable too. He was a gorgeous man. Basquiat is fine as hell, to be honest. But I think it made me, so there's several levels to it, right?
Okay.
It makes me think honestly of my own artistic practice as a photographer.
Okay.
Because I'm that friend who's always taking pictures of my friends.
Got it.
Like, sometimes they'll be irritated. Like, girl, stop. Like, I'm like my hair's not done. But then, of course, they're like happy to have it later.
Right. Yeah.
But as someone who also refers to myself on occasion as a documentarian, it made me think about how I document my own friends and my own collaborators. Because I call almost everybody that I work with, all my subjects, collaborators. Because it's very much like a collaborative process to create the photos that we do. But with this, it was almost like, it reminds me somewhat of even like autopsy photography.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know what exactly he was going for here. He does have like a diary entry where he says, I photographed Jean-Michel in a jockstrap today. And I just was curious, like, why?
Yeah.
Like, what was exactly the purpose? But I think a phrase that I do not care for is the black body.
Okay.
I get why people phrase it that way. It's a rhetoric that really, I think, popped up within the last few years. We were literally talking about like Michael Brown's body being left in the street. I started seeing more activists and organizers and even academics and scholars referring to the black body and black bodies, which reminds me of Strange Fruit. Right?
Yeah.
Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. I think that's somewhat of my uncomfortability around that phrase. But when I saw this series of photos, it reminded me of that.
Yeah.
This like almost sterile documentation of a black body, right? I think it also, the headshot in particular, looks like a mugshot.
Yeah, there's a kind of vacantness in Basquiat's eyes in this particular image.
Right. And I think for such a like expressive person, it's different to see him this way. Yeah. Almost broken into pieces. But I also thought about the fact that Basquiat was like fascinated with anatomy.
Yeah.
He had, scars from a surgery he had when he was like 8 years old, got hit by a car, and his mom brought him this Grey's Anatomy book. And he was really into it. And you can even knowing that about him and then looking at his work, you can kind of see how his fascination and affinity for anatomy really played into the way in which he drew even his skulls, his figures. So it made me think about that too. Like, again, not trying to think all the time of Jean-Michel being taken advantage of by Warhol, but
this victimization narrative,
right? Giving him like in some empowerment, that I wasn't necessarily extending to him before by being so defensive of him. And I thought about whether that was some of the dialogue around these photos being taken. Like maybe it was just a simple interest in his body as anatomical. So,
I mean, reading some of the diary entries though by Warhol, there are moments where he's commenting on Basquiat's BO. He's commenting on who his sexual partners are.
He called him dirty.
So he's dirty, all these things like that. So that type of fascination wasn't just about his image. It was literally about his corporal being, his body, in addition to the other fascinations that Warhol had with him. Who was he relating to? Where was he showing? Who bought his work and who didn't? What's happening with his gallery? This is total, I don't know. We're trying to steer away from the word control, right? Yeah. But there's this this total, fascination with Basquiat through and through, Yeah. I don't know what word to use instead of
I think it's worth mentioning, particularly us as queer people, right? Warhol was gay. He was openly gay.
Yeah.
He definitely seemed to be attracted to Jean-Michel. He probably also was fascinated with his virility. And I think that's why sort of the unease is not something that's ever going to completely diminish.
Right.
When we think about the relationship between Warhol and Basquiat, because it was it was almost like a father figure, but I'm trying to stay away from the word control. Yeah. But it's almost like he felt responsible for him.
He was even Basquiat's landlord at some point.
Yeah. So I'm curious, really.
Yeah.
And it also struck me, then that I mean, they died so close together, like a year and a half apart. And it really struck me too about how their relationship even ended.
Right.
And what I was pleased about though is that at least his estate, the Jean-Michel estate, has stood by the publishing of all of these new works, of all the photography that Warhol took of Jean-Michel, because it makes me feel that at least there's some kind of approval process that maybe Basquiat didn't get to have in life, with how these photos would be seen one day, the context in which they're presented, which is mainly in relation to Warhol's diary entries. Right. The lack of being able to know quite as much about Basquiat's thought process is, I think, gonna bother me forever.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a similar thing that happens for me as someone who works at the Warhol, where we have this this excess of objects, items, ephemera from his life, and you're still who was this guy? In the same way through Warhol's excessive documentation of Basquiat, we have all these images, we are literally seeing every nook and cranny of this man's body, and you're still who was this guy? So it also speaks to the failure, I think, of images, to really tell to tell a definitive truth, or maybe they just reveal that that truth is, I don't know, is fractured, it's many, it's multifaceted, it's conflicting. And that if you're looking for some empirical truth, there's not one to be found, period. Even if you have an excess of images to support, Cool.
Well, that's something to think about.
Thank you, honey, so much for this really, really incredibly rich conversation. I know people say that all the time, but it's true. I've never gotten to have this type of conversation here at the Warhol, so I'm really glad we're doing this series.
Me too.
And I look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you, Petra. No, this was a great opportunity. I'm definitely mad honored that you asked me to come and talk about Basquiat, an artist I love. It was great talking with another Black queer woman and artist about this work too. It was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. See you around. See you around Pittsburgh.
Indeed. Yeah. On these streets.
On these bridges.